Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Alamdar Khan. And yes, as you know, we give you sports information from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports. That works both for Twitter and for Instagram. But anyways, we'll go to the headlines first. And yes, talking about the world of Olympics, we talk about basketball. Yes, US men basketball team defeated by France, while Italy beats Germany at the Tokyo Olympics on Sunday. And talking about Olympics football, yes, we talk about France beating South Africa 4-3, while Brazil managed to draw against Ivory Coast by 0-0 in the group stages of Men Olympic Soccer Tournament. And yes, we talk about weightlifting from the world of Olympics. Weightlifter Talha Talib narrowly missed out on winning an Olympic medal for Pakistan. However, he stood fifth in the 67 kilogram category. And yes, from the world of cricket, Pakistan versus West Indies both have agreed to play in a revised 4-match T20 international series rather than 5 matches. And yes, those were the headlines. And finally, we see Tokyo 2020 taking charge. But yet again, so many happenings in terms of the world of Olympics. But to discuss right now, we're going to discuss and focus more on the basketball side. Yes, talking about basketball, I'm going to start off with the US obviously losing to France. That is 83-76. With all the firepower that US had, still, yet again, France managed to win. But to discuss the in-depth analysis, we have our basketball expert, Josh Reynolds. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, my friend. Happy to be back.
Great. So Josh would want to talk about this match in particular to begin with. Finally, Olympics come up to that conclusive side of executing itself, but then France winning against the United States. So how do you see this impacting? Because this was the first game in terms of Group A, and I think in the long run that may be having a bigger impact in their performance, because right now in the US team, I think they have all the firepower from the world of NBA. So how do you see this developing further?
Of course, this is the talk of the Olympics so far. It is at the beginning of the exhibition games that Team USA put together. You could kind of see they were trying to gel, trying to mesh. It's hard when you look at all of these different countries. All of these guys, for France, for example, they've been playing together since they were about 10 years old. So they are a team. They are a very good team. And Team USA, they've got a couple guys who played together, but mainly it's just a bunch of NBA players with a ton of talent that they just threw on the same roster and said, hey, go out there and get us a gold medal. Right. And clearly we're seeing that that's not working. It's kind of awesome to see that the talent gap in the entire world has caught up to the USA. It isn't just about Team USA and all of these superstars in the NBA anymore. Right. Evan Fournier for France, he put it perfectly. He said, look, individually, USA is better on paper than we are, but we're a better team. We've just played together much longer, and we're a better team than they are. And we saw it firsthand. It was
if we, Josh, look back into the exhibition matches, if you remember, USA also lost against Nigeria, if I'm not wrong, but a few weeks back. I think going in this trajectory will surely be affecting the United States team.
Yeah, I think so too. They lost to Nigeria and they lost to Australia right off the bat in those exhibition games. So it was clear to see, okay. But at the same time, you could say that they were still waiting for Devin Booker. They were waiting for Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday to come over because they were in the NBA Finals.
Right.
So kind of we're like, okay, yeah, maybe they're not all the way put together. And then actually before the game yesterday, Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton, they all showed up hours before the game.
Right.
And they still played a little bit. So even with that, though, it's not a good look. It's not a good way to start the Olympics. And it was their first loss since 2004 during pool play, which is not, again, it's just not how you want to start off. They got off on the wrong foot. despite good play from Drew Holiday, really tried to throw them on their back. Damian Lillard and Kevin Durant, you look at those guys and you expect them to be the shot makers and those to be the go-to guys,
Right.
and they did not look good.
Well, don't you think the Team USA should have focused on sending the Milwaukee Bucks in terms of representing the Olympics?
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure Team USA would have sent the entire Bucks roster if they could. I know we're going to touch on it, but man alive, Team USA would be more than happy to have somebody like Giannis Antetokounmpo on their team right now.
Absolutely. And talking about, obviously, if you look back into, we talk about Brooklyn Nets, we talk about Kevin Durant, obviously him and his trio, obviously they could not reach to the point where they were supposed to in terms of the world of NBA. But yet again, now I think three main players from Milwaukee Bucks are there, so I think maybe keeping in mind that, we'll keep a benefit of doubt in terms of USA's performance for now, maybe from the next game onwards, things may change.
They could. Things could change, and I would suspect that they do. Team USA, they still have obviously 2 games left in pool play. You look at their group that they play, they've got Iran next, and then they finish with Czech Republic. I expect them to come out and look much, much better tomorrow. I think that they'll look like a completely different team. Also, I believe Chris Middleton hardly played, and he's going to be one of their go-to guys who gets a lot of the minutes down the stretch. Obviously, them just getting off the plane and being thrown into the system and the games right away. They expected them, hey, just mesh and gel with everything. I fully suspect that Drew Holiday, Devin Booker, and Chris Middleton are all going to get a lot more minutes. It's not going to be as spread out like it was in this first game and this first loss to France. And I expect them to come out and look much, much different for these next 2 games in Group A play. And obviously moving on from there, it will be very interesting because you look at the other groups, there's just firepower coming out of everywhere. Australia looks unbelievable.
Right.
They're in Group B. They look extremely, extremely good. And then you've got Italy and Germany as well. I know that they just recently played. There are good teams. They're great countries and great talent on all of these different countries' teams.
Right.
Like I said earlier, it's pretty awesome to see. It's not just the USA is expected to win gold. Yes, those expectations are still there, but it's not just a runaway anymore. Every country has a very solid team, and anybody could beat anybody in any given night.
Right, and if we look back into the track record in terms of all the teams out there from different countries, who do you think has the most solid chance in terms of proving their worth? But I do understand, I've followed NBA, obviously you have been doing that, but in terms of teams overall, in terms of countries, like you said, the gelling in part is the most important part, and I think that truly is. But who do you think, in terms of all the countries out there, definitely have a solid chance in terms of getting the gold?
Yeah, great question. Like I mentioned, Australia is a team that I think has a very, very good chance. They're just one of those countries that, again, they played together so long. And you look at their roster, they're missing arguably their best player in Ben Simmons. The end of his season and that disappointing playoff run kind of took him out and took him off the Olympic roster. But if you look at their roster right now, they're amazing without him. If you have Ben Simmons on that roster, which they will, I suspect, in the next Olympics in 4 years, they are going to be extremely dangerous. They look amazing with Joe Ingles and Patty Mills, Matisse Thybulle, the defensive expert and specialist from Philadelphia. They look awesome. As well as in Group C, this game was just played last night, Slovenia and Argentina. Luka Doncic is unbelievable. He had 48 points last night in his Olympic debut. If he plays like that, I don't know who's going to beat them. Also, something funny I wanted to mention, when Luka first played in the NBA, he had a quote. They asked him, and he said, "Oh, it's much easier to score here in the NBA than it is overseas in Europe." And everybody kind of laughed at him. Team USA is witnessing that right now with these FIBA rules. They are not getting the touch calls that they normally get in the NBA, and you can tell it's a weird adjustment for them. But Luka's out there just absolutely dominating, absolutely killing guys. 48 points is just unbelievable, and I fully suspect Slovenia to come out of Group C. I expect Australia or Italy, who also looks really, really good, to come out of Group B. And we'll see. France just looked great. They look like a good team. Hopefully USA can put it together, but I could fully see France coming out of Group A as well.
Right. Talking about Slovenia, it was definitely a high scoring game. It was 118 to 100. So I still think, as you mentioned, Group C, Slovenia definitely has the opportunity. But talking about Italy versus Germany, Italy managed to win against Germany 82-92. And I think this will further go ahead in terms of their performance in Group B. How do you see this further developing for Italy and for Germany?
Yeah, it was an amazing game. Germany led the entire game, and it was something that you thought that they were going to run away with. If you look at the score, it's a little deceiving because Italy won by 10.
Right.
It was a close game until there was about 2 minutes left until Italy actually pulled away. But they looked great. Italy has a couple guys, Danilo Gallinari, who comes off the bench for them, obviously the Atlanta Hawks and longtime NBA guy. He's just such a seasoned vet and can score whenever he wants. He's a huge presence for them, and he made some big shots down the stretch. Italy just caught fire late, and they look really, really good. And it's also fun to see they have Warriors rookie Nico Mannion, who is their starting point guard. If you remember, University of Arizona, just excellent talent. And so it's pretty cool. He didn't play a lot last year for the Warriors, obviously being behind Steph Curry. But it's pretty awesome to see him represent his home country and get a bunch of bulk minutes. And he looked really good. He did not look like a rookie. And that's a disheartening loss for Germany because, like I mentioned, they led the entire game. And so to just kind of see it slip away from them the last few minutes when Italy got hot has to be disheartening. But I could still see Germany obviously getting hot. They've got 2 games left to get out of their group. But if Italy keeps playing like that and they just shot the lights out to end the game there, if they can continue to shoot the ball that well, I fully expect them to come out of their group and make a run at this.
Right, and if I look at the scorecard, yes, you're absolutely right. In terms of Germany started in the first quarter scoring 32 and Italy only had 22. And then we look into the last quarter, 24 for Italy and 10 for Germany. So I think maybe the Italians kind of moved more onto the offensive side along with the defensive side.
Yep, you nailed it. That's exactly it. And 10 points in a whole quarter, especially the fourth quarter, that's inexcusable for Germany. They're not going to do that again. But yeah, you're exactly right. It focused. They just made shots too. Italy did down the stretch in that first quarter and the first half. Really, you could tell they were getting open looks. They just weren't going in. But they, like you mentioned, they shifted their mindset of okay, we've got to get some buckets, and that's exactly what they did in the fourth quarter, outscoring Germany like they did.
Right. And looking into the upcoming matches, if you want to talk about them, obviously one more match that also happened, Australia managed to win against Nigeria and Czech Republic managed to win against Iran. So now the upcoming games include Japan versus Spain from Group C, and then we talk about Germany versus Nigeria. That's surely going to be interesting, and of course the United States versus Iran. This I'm talking about what's going to happen. One is happening today. 2 of the games are for Wednesday. In fact, there are 4 games for Wednesday. So which game do you personally think will be more electrifying? Because slowly and gradually, all the teams are gathering momentum, trying to understand the fact that, now we are in the Olympics, we are representing our countries. It's a big pressure representing the country, in the Olympics, because Olympics is all about pride. So how do you see all the upcoming matches, and which match do you think would be surely an interesting one to watch?
Yeah. And first, isn't it just awesome that we're even having the Olympics? This was one of those things. Obviously, it's been postponed, and I can only imagine how it feels to be the athletes who are actually there. It's so awesome that we're actually having these games. It makes me extremely happy, and I love watching them.
Right.
The biggest game for me that I'm going to circle, I would say Nigeria and Germany is the one I'm most interested in.
Right.
Nigeria has a great roster as well. They've got some NBA guys who are on that Nigeria national team who are really good players.
Right.
Again, as we talked about earlier, it was just an exhibition game, but they beat Team USA in a game that they were fully expected to lose by almost 30 points. And so I expect them to come out. They had a disappointing start. Again, same with Germany. So I expect both of those teams to kind of come out with a different mindset. And that'll be a slugfest. That'll be a really fun game to watch. And I'm also very curious to see the Japan and Spain game.
Right.
Spain has a roster full of vets. Pau Gasol, who's still playing, which is awesome. You've got guys like Luis Scola playing for his home country in Argentina. He hasn't been in the NBA for the last 5-6 seasons, so it's awesome that they still have the passion. Like you said, the Olympics is all about pride. So it's pretty awesome to see some of these veteran guys who still have that pride in them, who still want to represent their country. But I'm very curious to see what Spain can do. Obviously, with their season, their season vets on their team with Ricky Rubio, you've got the Gasol brothers. I'm curious to see what they can do. I expect them to beat Japan, but to kind of come out of their group, I'll be very curious to see if they've still got it, or if their roster just simply is too old this season. But that's the one. Italy versus Australia as well is going to be a game that I'm going to keep my eye on. I'm all in on Australia this year. I expect big things, and I know I mentioned him earlier, Matisse Thybulle, that defensive specialist from Philadelphia. He is so fun to watch. He had 5 steals in their first game. If you're into defense, then he is definitely your guy to check out. But Patty Mills has that Australia offense just cooking. They look really good. And again, Italy coming off that win against Germany. Australia-Italy is going to be a game that will be very, very fun to watch. So there's a bunch of them. Like you said, there's 4 coming up, but I've got my eye on all of them, and I think they're all going to be really good. This is a great start to the Olympics.
Well, Josh, thank you so much. There are definitely some interesting games coming up. It was great having you on the show, and we'll further discuss when things develop, and we'll surely have you back on the show again. Thank you again.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
So that was Josh, and yes, he discussed the matches that actually took place in terms of the World of Olympics. We talked about basketball, and there's more coming up from the World of Olympics. But what we'll do is we'll take a quick break, and once we're back from the break, we discuss what's really happening. See you guys after the break. And welcome back from the break. And yes, we were discussing the World of Olympics, the basketball side, but now we're going to talk more about what's happening on the football side. There have been some interesting development with regards to the world of football. To begin with, if we talk about Germany versus Saudi Arabia, obviously Germany managed to win, then followed up with Japan winning, and then South Korea winning. But we will be discussing an interesting match, which is France beating South Africa. So we have with us Rakshit Chopra all the way from India. Rakshit, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Great. So Rakshit, we'll start off. Firstly, congratulations for the fact that, finally Olympics came up to the conclusive side that it began. Unfortunately, because of the COVID situation, because I'd been following it for quite some time actually, but finally it managed to do so. So you being all into football, I'm going to start off discussing France beating South Africa, and how do you see it further developing for both the teams?
Yeah, thank you for having me firstly. France actually were one of the favorites heading into this tournament. So they were actually about to lose against South Africa. Only a late Andre Pierre-Gignac hat-trick meant that they were able to draw the game. And in injury time, finally, Savanier scored, which handed France a crucial lifeline. If they were to draw this match, it would have been very difficult for them to qualify for the next round. But I think this late win still gives them a little hope.
Right. And talking about hopes, if we look back into, because pretty much all the teams have been through the situation back in Euro 2020. So I think everybody's here for the gold. So as you mentioned, France being the favorites, and yes, South Africa were not the part of the Euro 2020, but I still think they still have the courage to be where they are. So how do you further see in terms of not only France, because there are so many superstar teams out there who've been practicing, who've been playing, how do you see it further developing for not only for France but also for South Africa, because they were not in Euro 2020, so there may be a possibility for them maybe in the long run to get up to the rise?
Yes, of course. South Africa actually put in a very impressive performance to basically hold France up to a very late period in the game where they almost snatched victory. It was a very impressive performance. So they have a player called Cody Sang, who was very impressive. And as you know, it's an under-23 tournament. Most of the players in the Olympics are under-23. And South Africa definitely have a very bright future when it comes to football, gauging by their performance in the Olympics so far.
Right, and we would also want to talk about Brazil versus Cote d'Ivoire. How do you see that developing? Because it ended up being a draw. It's still interesting to see because Brazil was also at, Copa America, if I'm not wrong. And I think they still have they were the finalists there. But, drawing this match will surely have a long-term impact in their performance.
Yeah, as you said, Brazil were in the Copa America. Obviously, most of their star players like Neymar, etc., are not. But some stars are still there. For example, Richarlison, who scored a very impressive hat-trick in the first match against Germany. He is here alongside other stars. Antony from Ajax, Matheus Cunha from Hertha Berlin. The match against Ivory Coast was a disappointing match, primarily because of the red card which Brazil got in the 14th minute. So almost the entire match they were playing with 10 men and still managed to eke out a single point. And I think Brazil overall are looking strong, and I'd be surprised if they don't get on the podium at the end.
Right. As it is all flowing, I think they surely need to focus more on that. And not only that, I would also want to talk about, if we talk about Honduras versus New Zealand, obviously Honduras managed to win that part as well. And we talk about Argentina winning against Egypt. You know, in terms of Argentina scoring 1 goal against Egypt, I think as per their reputation, obviously winning the Copa America and now coming here, obviously not with the main squad, but yet again, when we talk about Argentina right now, or if we talk about the main teams right now, as even if we talked about Brazil, I still think there's a lot of hope from, even if they're new under 18, under 23, young lot coming in, but still, we still need to have, because this is Olympics. Olympics is specifically all about pride and being the Olympian.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. We should remember that Argentina actually won the gold medal, Lionel Messi, Aguero, etc. in 2008 Olympics. So they have a good legacy when it comes to performing in the Olympics. As you mentioned, they won the Copa America. Lionel Messi finally won his first ever major international trophy with Argentina. So when you talk about the World Cup, the prospects, I think, look a little more brighter than they looked a couple of months ago. But in the Olympics so far, they have been struggling. They lost to Australia, which was a big shock. They eked out a narrow 1-0 win against Egypt. The last match against Spain is going to be very tough because, for me, Spain are the absolute favorites to win the gold this time around.
Right. So, in terms of your prediction, who you think Spain will be the right choice, or are there any other further choices? Because I still think everybody is going to fight for the gold.
Absolutely. But so it totally depends on the strength of the squad. And if you see the Spanish squad, they have a lot of seasoned professionals who actually played in the Euros, also part of the Olympic squad. Players like Pedri from Barcelona, they have Oyarzabal from Sociedad, Dani Olmo, Carlos Soler from Valencia. So a lot of very, very highly talented people playing in the Spanish squad as compared to a lot of youngsters playing in the Argentina squad. So for me, Spain are the favorites. I think I'd put Brazil second and perhaps France third.
Right. And in terms of upcoming games, which game should we be keeping our eyes on? Because there are a few interesting lineups. Specifically, if I would look into on the 28th of July, it's Spain versus Argentina. I think that would be definitely one of the biggest clash of the entire football right now.
Yeah, definitely. Spain versus Argentina is crucial. Both teams still haven't qualified. For Argentina to qualify, realistically, they have to beat Spain, which is going to be very, very difficult. I am also looking forward to France versus Japan. France have to win that match because if Mexico beats South Africa, then Mexico are through. And Japan, as I mentioned earlier, have won both their matches. So France, a stuttering France against host Japan is another, I think, mouth-watering clash to look forward to in the final round of group stage matches.
Right. And if we talk about favorites, I'm sure for everyone watching Olympics would have their own country as their favorites, to be precise. But which underdog do you think right now, in terms of the games so far, you think may have the spark to bring in some surprises to the world of Olympics?
Yeah, so on top of that list has to be Japan. When I saw the group Mexico, France, South Africa, Japan, I thought France is going to top the group, Mexico going to come second, but Japan are actually the only team to win both their matches, and Japan actually have already qualified for the next round. And being the host team, it obviously gives you more of a push, more of an impetus to perform well. So maybe Japan is someone who I see maybe squeaking in one of those medal positions. Otherwise, as you mentioned earlier, Honduras picking up a win against New Zealand is one of the big shocks, and Honduras, if they qualify for the next round, is I will definitely monitor their progress into the next rounds. And otherwise, I think Germany, if they stutter out, then Ivory Coast, who can qualify second position, may also cause a few shocks in the next round.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Rakshit, for being a part of the show and discussing the world of football in Olympics with us. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that was Rakshit, and obviously he gave us an in-depth analysis with how things are flowing in terms of football. Not to forget that, as per him, Spain would be the most solid team because they have like the main professionals that they're supposed to have. But anyways, this was from the world of football. And yes, talking about Olympic weightlifting. Yes, we talk about Pakistan. Yes, Pakistan Talha Talib actually narrowly missed out on winning an Olympic medal. Yes, he has actually proven himself. He represented Pakistan after 44 years. Someone actually went there to represent the country in terms of weightlifting, and he would be the first weightlifter in 44 years. And ultimately he got the 5th position in 67 kilogram category with lifting a weight of 320 kilograms. It was interesting to see. He actually managed to win gold for Pakistan back in 2016, but we had a lot of hope. But he managed to end up on the 5th level. If things were better for him, maybe in the long run, at least it takes a lot of courage and a lot of pride to represent the country. And being in a weightlifting category or in a category in which you are an individual, not a team, it takes a lot of courage. So we definitely still want to congratulate him and tell him how proud we are of his performance. So this was from the world of weightlifting in the Olympics. I'm going to jump over to the upcoming news with regards to the world of cricket. Yes, talking about West Indies versus Pakistan. Yes, the T20 match series has come up to this situation that they will be playing 4 T20 series matches instead of 5s. And remember, both the teams are actually looking forward to the World Cup, T20 World Cup, that actually going to happen. So it's because of the COVID-19 scheduling that they have shortened down the situation, and they've come up to a conclusion that they decided to have only 4 T20 matches. And not to forget that West Indies is now in power with regards to winning against Australia, because they had an amazing series with regards to the T20. So I still think they are more of the firepower now, and it's going to be super interesting to see how Pakistan manages to face them, because we just saw how Pakistan actually had a very tough moment lately. But anyways, it would surely continue, and we hope for the best. And in terms of the news from the World Cup T20, this is still underway, but it's been told that it's going to be in October 2021. Initially, it was planned to be in India. But anyways, guys, this was pretty much it from the world of sports. If you guys want to reach out to us, on our social media handle, which is @Indus News Sports. Till then, take good care of yourselves, and bye-bye.